Welcome back to the John Fredericks Radio Show. This is Mike Rubino filling in for your Godzilla of the Truth. We are joined now by Principal Deputy Press Secretary of the White House, Hogan Gidley. Thank you so much for joining us, Hogan.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the time this morning.
Yeah. Well, we know that the White House is, hard at work solving pretty much the greatest problems this world has faced in a very long time. So I want to dive into exactly what's going on right now in the market. So the president's built a resoundingly strong economy, and as the country begins to open back up again, what we saw, especially as the bell just rang on Wall Street, the markets are just unbelievable. They're taking off. And what do you contribute that to?
Well, the president's policies of deregulation, tax cuts, making sure that manufacturing can come back into this country and that businesses once again want to actually expand here as opposed to expanding overseas, setting up a tax structure that makes it lucrative for them to be here in this country. It was almost as though they were penalized for wanting to set up shop in America and hire American workers. We've taken away a lot of the restrictions that made business here almost impossible. And look, the previous administration told us all these jobs were never coming back, and they started to come back. And remember Barack Obama famously said, "Oh yeah, how are you going to do it, Donald? You need a magic wand." Well, it turns out Donald Trump himself is the magic wand because he's the one who put these policies in place. And listen, we've been saying the whole time, dips and dives, but also at our peaks, that the president built this economy to historic highs. He did it once, and he'll do it again. But we were saying that whole time that the fundamentals of this economy are strong. And now you understand why we kept saying that. Because even in the face of a global pandemic, now you're seeing rebounds the likes of which no one ever even thought possible because of what this president has put in place. And let's not understate what happened last week. The jobs report was coming out. It's a 10 million job swing. And the reason I say that is because the brilliant prognosticators, the brilliant people at all the opinion pages of various liberal institutions of journalism were predicting that we would see 8 million jobs lost. Well, we not only didn't see 8 million jobs lost, we saw 2 million gained. That's 10 million off.
Yep.
So these brilliant folks out there, who everyone looks to as the ones to figure out what's coming down the pike, Krugman's chief amongst them over at the New York Times. I mean, it's the same guy who said that the internet would basically not really have any impact on business. It wouldn't revolutionize business. It'd be kind of like the fax machine.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of brilliance right there is proven wrong time and time again, and it's because this president is a businessman and he knows what he's doing.
Well, and that's not to make light of what we have going on in the country. I saw Brooke Rollins on Fox News yesterday, and I loved a quote she said. She said, "Clearly America is hurting and America is divided, and so the focus is on safety and security first and foremost, but unity next and prosperity after that." But I think, the one thing that she doesn't necessarily say, but you can derive it from her statement, is that prosperity is kind of ongoing. The fundamentals that you said are strong in this economy, and that allows for prosperity to occur even in the midst of, the coronavirus pandemic, what happened in Minneapolis. And I want to pivot to exactly what happened in Minneapolis.
Can I make this one point, though?
You're
right about. I just want to say this because you're correct. People are still hurting. It's not like we're back to where we were. But the news is good. The future looks good based on the indicators we're seeing. Larry Kudlow's mentioned it many times. The president obviously is really pushing the strong economic growth. So people are still hurting. I mean, there are tens of millions of jobs lost because of this pandemic. We've got to get those folks back to work, and this is the only president to do it.
Yeah, and I think what I saw in a new ad was that we're going to experience the Great American Comeback. That's beginning. We're going to renew, restore, rebuild, and we'll make America great again. And I think that's a message that inherently works for this president because he ran on it in 2016. He can run on it again in faces of pandemics of which we've never seen, in faces of rioting and discontent across the nation, the likes of which we haven't seen in decades. This is a president who can bring together America. We can rebuild together. We can restore together. And, in that vein, I want to talk about law and order. This is a law and order president. He ran on law and order. One of the nights of his convention in 2016 was about law and order. So, explain to me exactly where the president's coming from. His speech, I thought, to the nation was excellent. Just walk us through exactly what's been going on in the White House this past week.
Well, I have to say the president was very clear in the Rose Garden that the video of the police officer kneeling on the neck of George Floyd was angering, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was upset about it. He talked to the family about it. He also made sure that DOJ focused on this case. They were looking into it as a civil rights violation as well, something the president has to do, and push them to do it. And so the DOJ is listening to the president in that instance. He wants justice done. That's pretty clear, and he said that time and time again. He also stands with the peaceful protesters, and there are many out there. The First Amendment gives you the right to peaceably assemble. The president stands with those who uphold the Constitution, whether it be the First, Second, Third, Fourth, whatever the amendment is. He stands with them because he does so revere the Constitution. But at the same time, when things devolve into lawlessness and destruction, death, you can't sit idly by, whether you're a mayor, a governor, a president, and let people's businesses be destroyed. Let protesters, rioters, looters drag innocent Americans into the streets and beat them within an inch of their lives, leaving them to lie in a pool of their own blood. You cannot do that. And any desire out there to defund the police or let the mob rule is going to be met with not just anger from this president, but with a show of strength that we will protect the American people against this type of lawlessness. We will protect the American people against brutality, whether that comes from a police officer or whether it comes from rioters or looters. That's wrong. It's against the law. It's criminal behavior, and quite frankly, it's disgusting to watch what some of these people are doing to our great American cities, our businesses, defacing public property. I mean, this isn't my capital of Washington, D.C. It's everyone's capital. It's the nation's capital. Every American should be sickened by what they've seen as it relates to how these people are spray painting some of these monuments. Let's not forget, when you go and deface the Veterans Affairs building or you go and deface World War II memorials, those people died, fought, and lived a life that gave you the right or ability to protest. It wasn't the protester who did that. It's that famous poem from Charles Providence. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who gave you freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who gave you the freedom to protest. That's what the soldier does, and to try and deface those types of monuments too just shows a complete ignorance of how we got to this place and where we are.
Well, I think it's so interesting that the protesters, if you take this street right in front of the White House, they trashed T-ism, so a very small business. They trashed the Chamber of Commerce, a bastion of Republican politics. They trashed the AFL-CIO, a bastion of Democratic liberal politics, and a church. So that's pretty much just widespread destruction, of which they're attacking virtually every facet of, American life, and within that, each sect of American political beliefs. So Hogan, we had earlier on the show, we had Matt Mowers, who's running in New Hampshire's 1st congressional district. We had Attorney General Jeff Landry. And what I think everyone kept coming back to is this notion of defunding the police and what an anti-American thought that is, and how it's essentially an untenable position to take. And Joe Biden has now taken that. Nancy Pelosi and that $3 trillion heinous bill she put forward a few weeks ago, she's taken that position. So what is the position of the White House on this tack that the Democrats have taken 150 days before an election?
It's interesting to watch the posturing, both political and policy-wise, that the left is participating in right now. I mean, the bill you just mentioned, for example, the liberal radical, Green New Deal buffet of nonsense that they tried to put forward in a time when businesses were suffering. I mean, the president wanted to make sure the American people got money directly. He wanted to make sure that small businesses got money directly so they could stay open and employ people, so you didn't have to have so many people going on unemployment, for example. He did that and acted quickly. And for all of the bellyaching from the Democrats, I mean, it was Nancy Pelosi who put a stop to the negotiations between ourselves and Chuck Schumer in the Senate and decided to stop the bill itself for about a week. She did it not once but twice, just to try and get her, her ridiculous ideas through tacked onto a bill that had nothing to do with coronavirus. And let's not forget, she wanted all of those things before coronavirus hit. So it's pretty clear the two have nothing to do with each other. She just wanted it done because, as any Democrat would tell you, you don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. And so they tried to use that to cram through ridiculous policies and put forth Green New Deal proposals that would have crippled American businesses and allowed us not to recover in a quick manner that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, can make us do.
Well, Tim Murtaugh had a comment within the last couple of days, and he essentially said that the president runs very well against the defined Joe Biden. And I want to kind of dive into that because as we look to define Joe Biden, obviously the president's led on energy with ANWR and everything he's done for Western Pennsylvania and West Virginia and other places. He's led on jobs. He's opened up the economy. He's done, his global politics, whether it be taking on China, has been kind of unprecedented. So over the next couple months, what do you see the White House doing to kind of set that and define Joe Biden? Because a lot of what the president done, I think, over the next months, people start paying attention to elections in September. So what can we expect out of the White House? What would you like to tell Virginians and people across this country about, things like China and the energy economy?
Well, look, obviously I can't speak too much about an election or politics because of the Hatch Act, but what I can tell you is this administration systematically reversed all of the policies of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And what did we get for it? We got record low unemployment for African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans. We got a rebuilt military. We got a tax structure that allowed the American people to keep more of their own money. A vast majority of the tax cuts went to middle America, and even the New York Times had to put forth a headline that said, yeah, sorry to tell you guys, but you actually did get a tax cut here. What he did overseas, moving our embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, those types of moves that people promised for a long time but never did, got criminal justice reform done, opportunity zones in the African American community that, quite frankly, as we saw wages increase for the first time in 40 years, they went up at a higher rate in those opportunity zones, about 8% higher, as a matter of fact. So while we, disagree fundamentally, Republicans and Democrats do, that's fine. But what you got to see so quickly was because of the way the president moves with that businessman mentality and so fast that eroding everything that Joe Biden and Barack Obama did, you saw this country turn around so quickly. And so the dichotomy is there. It's an easy choice to make. We can go back to where we were, in which joblessness was high, and there were divisions at various levels for different reasons, and then also we weren't as respected or feared or loved internationally as we are now. All of those types of things just show the stark difference between how Donald Trump leads a nation and how Barack Obama and Joe Biden would.
Well, erring away from the Hatch Act, I don't want to get you in trouble. I think there's three other things to mention. The Iran deal, the job-killing Paris Climate Accord, and the Clean Power Plan, all of which have been either canceled or withdrawn from. And then we have, we're now a net natural gas exporter for the first time since 1957. We've increased our coal exports by 60%, which I think leads us to an all-time high. So I think you certainly do have the policies to back up that claim. I want to talk about one last thing before.
But the trade deals too.
Yeah.
Let's not forget. It was you just point out the Iran deal. That's a great example. But the trade deals that Joe Biden and Barack Obama were for, that only went to hurt the American worker. to somehow kowtow to another nation. This president said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to stand up for the American worker. And what do you know? Jobs started coming back to this country. People saw wage increases for the first time, as I mentioned, in 40 years. I mean, it was the successes across the board for so many of the forgotten men and women across this country. And that's a record that I'm proud to talk about.
Yeah, you have USMCA to out there, and I think that there's been a net increase in U.S. exports, and I think that there's a lot of things to talk about. The one last thing I want to talk about before we end the show today is Space Force. Were you able to go down and see the SpaceX Dragon lift off?
I was not. I did not go on that trip, sadly.
Well, that's a pity.
But what a great day.
Yeah, and what a thing for Americans to view as a unifying experience in this time where people are feeling so divisive. Please tell us, though, about exactly why Space Force is so important and why that launch back to the International Space Station was a moment that all Americans should be proud of.
Well, look, to have the creation of the first new branch of the military since the 1950s is really exciting. Everyone knows so much of what we do now and have now with technology, et cetera, is in space. We want to make sure we protect those assets. So the president made sure to think outside the box and how do we get something on the books that would actually go to protect those things. And Space Force was a logical conclusion. It's very exciting, and SpaceX was a great example of not only just why it's important, but the public-private partnerships that this president talks about all the time got us, with the necessary PPE gear for coronavirus, got us the gowns and the masks and the gloves, the ventilators, et cetera. You saw a similar symbiotic partnership between that with Tesla and the federal government. You watch that liftoff and two people going into space, two of only 7 in history, to be the test flight for something like that was so heroic, so brave, and really just pointed back to the greatness of the American spirit, the greatness of this country. And the president was there, showing not just unification, but touting the fact that this country will get through anything and everything, because at its core, we believe in freedom, we believe in our greatness, and that's what I think is so exciting. And as president, you get to participate in a lot of really cool things. I'd have to say that's probably one of the coolest he got to do, just because of what it represents, the bravery, the honor. And it makes you proud to be an American in moments like that.
It's amazing the president has done things that no president has done before. A few presidents have ever dreamed of, stepping foot in North Korea. This launch, it's been a wild ride to behold. Hogan, thank you so much for joining me today on the John Fredericks Show.
Absolutely. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks so much.